Good Erev Shabbos and an Erev Pesach to you, and I hope you're all well. Firstly, Mazel Tov to Rachel and Stuart Bernstein on the birth of their son, to Joe and Jonathan Pell on the occasion of Noah's Bat Mitzvah, to Janine and Johnny Moore on the occasion of the engagement of their daughter Natalie to Dov Palmer, and to Carol and Johnny Arkush on the birth of her grandson, and to anyone else who's celebrating a birthday or anniversary in the coming week. We wish Refuah Shalema a full and speedy recovery to anyone who's unwell. We wish Aricha Shamim long life to anyone observing a yortzeit in the coming week. You know, sometimes we hear a news story, but it doesn't really register with us. Now, that's either because it's happened a long way away, or it's not something that affects our lives directly. And that was my initial reaction to the news report of the container ship blocking the Suez Canal this week. But when I heard more of the details, and the timing so close to Pesach, it just refused to be ignored. Now listen carefully to what it said on Sky News. 8 tugboats are currently working to refloat the 400-meter-long Ever Given container ship that's blocking Egypt's Suez Canal that connects the Mediterranean to the Red Sea. Shipping website Vessel Finder showed 210 ships at either end of the canal. And the company trying to free the ship said that it might take weeks to move the Ever Given, which may mean that other boats are forced to reroute. Now, you may have heard my deliberate emphasis there, because when you're living and breathing Pesach for the last few weeks, nothing seems a coincidence, and this is just a gift. 8 boats, 8 days of Pesach, a 400-meter-long ship, 400 years the Jewish people were meant to be enslaved. 210 ships were blocked the same number of years that we were actually slaves, and taking weeks to move it. Pesach, as we know, is linked to Shavuos, which means weeks, and this is all happening in Egypt. Now we know that Rav Dessler points out that the Hebrew word for Egypt, Mitzrayim, comes from the root Metzah, which means constriction and distress, and also signifies boundary. And when the Jewish people were enslaved in Egypt, they were in a place of constriction, blocked from freedom in a boundary of a country that had never been broken. They were enslaved and didn't have the mental or physical space to express their free will in the world. The Ever Given is a modern-day story of this concept of Metzah, constrained in a narrow place. And the truth is, the same has been our experience from last Pesach to this. We have been mentally and physically restricted. You know, when the Jewish children of Israel were released from the constraints of Egypt, they were transformed from a bunch of slaves into the Jewish nation, and they were empowered and encouraged to become a Mamleches Kohanim v'Goy Kadosh, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. What will have changed for us when we're finally free of the coronavirus restrictions? How will we be transformed? And more importantly, what will we have changed about ourselves? You know, before leaving Egypt, God instructed Moshe to tell the Jewish people to request silver and gold from the Egyptians. And miraculously, the Egyptians agreed to this, and the people took these riches with them when they finally left. But this wasn't a new idea, because more than 400 years earlier, God had promised Abraham that his offspring will be enslaved for hundreds of years, but they would leave Birchush Gadol with great wealth. Now, why was this material acquisition such an important element of the Exodus? How significant was it that it was guaranteed from the original prophecy and insisted upon at the end? Well, the Maharal explains the Egyptian experience was far from a dispensable obstruction. On the contrary, it was the necessary backdrop for the birth of the nation. You see, hundreds of years earlier, Abraham was concerned that the Egyptian experience would be only negative for his descendants. And it makes sense. Imagine if we were told that our grandchildren and great-grandchildren wouldn't enjoy the freedoms that we do. Would we make a kiddush? Of course not. Abraham understandably felt the same. The forecast of slavery and suffering with no clear purpose seemed meaningless to him. Instead, he hoped that the bitter experiences would ultimately be productive. And that's what God was actually promising Abraham. We would leave Egypt, Birchush Gadol, with great wealth, with a national experience that we could build on for the rest of time. That was a great spiritual inheritance. You see, the physical wealth wasn't an end in itself. It never is. But it was actually a physical reminder of the fact that we weren't leaving empty-handed either physically or spiritually. It hadn't been a pointless experience. It was, in fact, the unforgettable circumstances in which we, as a nation, were born. The challenge of the slavery and the Exodus was the beginning of our national challenge. No other nation had faced this challenge, nor will they ever face it. Meeting this challenge and winning by following the way of God revealed Rechush Gadol, that great wealth that reverberates in the Jewish people until today. The soul that sustained us through every challenge throughout the ages. It has accompanied us and aided our survival through every exodus that we've encountered. And to this day. And that is why I'm so pleased that this year we produced Magid, a booklet called Magid, My Story for Our Times. And in it we've recorded the remarkable stories of a range of people, each with their own unique COVID story. And in their own unedited words, they describe what life was like for them in the past year. From the joy of the birth of a child to the tragedy of the loss of a loved one. It gives us an insight into the challenges faced by a nurse, a teacher and pilot, and the pain of someone separated from their family. Yet we also get a glimpse of an unforgettable wedding. And ultimately, it's about the survival of the spirit, the Jewish soul and the determination to emerge Bechush Gadol with great wealth, having learnt and grown from the experience. And we all have to write our own post-COVID story in which we will all have changed for the better. And so right now at Pesach, we have to commit ourselves to cherish those things that we've learnt are truly important in life. Number one, the fragility and the sanctity of life itself. Number two, the value of community both within and outside of the confines of a shul. Number three, the centrality of the home to our Jewish experience. And number four, the ability to connect with others even when we're socially distanced. If our own personal exodus in 5781-2021 will be transformed from the better, following our modern-day Mitzrayim experience, then Dayenu, it would have been worthwhile. I wish you all a Chag Kasher V'Sameach, a very happy, healthy, and a kosher Pesach. Good Shabbos.